The history of women's soccer in the United States is marked by a combination of grassroots efforts, cultural shifts, and institutional support that have propelled the sport to international prominence. Unlike many other countries, where soccer, or football, has long been a male-dominated sport, the United States' relative lack of a strong men's soccer tradition in the early 20th century allowed women's soccer to grow without as much direct competition from an entrenched men's system. Women's soccer in the U.S. began in earnest in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, though it was largely informal and underfunded. College and amateur teams started forming in the early 1900s, but opportunities were limited, and the sport remained a niche activity. Women's participation in sports generally faced societal resistance, and soccer was no exception. A pivotal moment in the history of U.S. women's soccer came with the passage of Title IX in 1972, a federal law that mandated gender equity in educational programs, including athletics, at institutions receiving federal funding. Title IX had a transformative impact on women's sports across the United States, leading to increased funding, resources, and opportunities for female athletes. In the wake of Title IX, women's soccer saw significant growth at the high school and collegiate levels. Schools and universities began to establish women's soccer programs, and the sport rapidly gained popularity. By the 1980s, the groundwork had been laid for the development of a national team, as more and more women were playing soccer at a competitive level. The U.S. Women's National Team, USWNT, was officially formed in 1985, with Mike Ryan serving as the first head coach. The team's early years were challenging, as they struggled to gain recognition and support. However, the players' dedication and passion for the sport set the stage for future success. The turning point for the USWNT came in 1991, when they competed in the inaugural FIFA Women's World Cup in China. The tournament was the first of its kind, and the U.S. team emerged as a dominant force, winning the championship by defeating Norway 2-1 in the final. This victory marked the beginning of the U.S. women's rise to prominence on the international stage. The 1990s were a golden era for U.S. women's soccer, with the national team establishing itself as the premier force in the sport. The team's success in the 1991 World Cup was followed by another major milestone, the 1996 Olympic Games in Atlanta, where women's soccer made its debut as an Olympic sport. The U.S. team won the gold medal, defeating China in the final in front of a home crowd. This victory further solidified the team's status as global leaders in women's soccer. The crowning achievement of this era came in 1999, when the U.S. hosted the FIFA Women's World Cup. The tournament was a watershed moment for women's soccer in the United States, drawing unprecedented attention and setting new standards for the sport. The final, played at the Rose Bowl in Pasadena, California, saw the U.S. team defeat China in a dramatic penalty shootout. Brandi Chastain's iconic celebration after scoring the winning penalty became one of the most memorable moments in sports history. The 1999 World Cup was more than just a victory on the field, it was a cultural phenomenon that brought women's soccer into the mainstream. The success of the tournament inspired a generation of young girls to take up the sport and led to increased investment in women's soccer at all levels. The early 2000s saw continued success for the USWNT, but also new challenges. However, the development of a professional league in the U.S. proved more difficult. In 2001, the Women's United Soccer Association, WUSA, was launched as the first professional women's soccer league in the United States. The league featured many of the stars from the 1999 World Cup team and aimed to capitalize on the growing popularity of women's soccer. However, despite initial enthusiasm, the league struggled financially and folded in 2003. The collapse of WUSA was a setback for women's soccer in the U.S., but it also highlighted the need for a more sustainable approach to professionalizing the sport. In 2009, a new league, Women's Professional Soccer, WPS, was established, but it too faced financial difficulties and was dissolved in 2012. The turning point for professional women's soccer in the U.S. came in 2013 with the launch of the National Women's Soccer League, NWSL. Unlike its predecessors, the NWSL was established with support from U.S. Soccer, which provided financial backing and worked to ensure the league's sustainability. The league also benefited from growing interest in women's soccer and a more stable business model. The NWSL quickly became one of the top women's soccer leagues in the world, attracting top talent from both the U.S. and abroad. The league provided a platform for the development of U.S. players and contributed to the continued success of the national team. The USWNT has continued to build on its legacy of success in the 21st century. The team won the FIFA Women's World Cup again in 2015 and 2019, becoming the first team to win the tournament 4 times. The 2019 World Cup, held in France, was particularly significant, as the US team dominated the competition, defeating the Netherlands in the final. The 2019 victory was celebrated as a triumph not just for the team, but for women's soccer as a whole. The team's success has also helped to drive the growth of women's soccer in the US at the grassroots level. Participation in youth soccer has increased, and the NWSL has continued to expand, with new teams joining the league and increased investment from sponsors and media partners. Looking to the future, US women's soccer is well positioned for continued growth. The success of the national team and the NWSL has created a strong foundation for the sport, and the increasing visibility of women's soccer in the US and around the world suggests that the sport will continue to thrive. The history of US women's soccer is a story of resilience, success, and transformation. From its early beginnings to its current status as a global powerhouse, US women's soccer has overcome numerous challenges to become one of the most successful and influential programs in the world. As the sport continues to grow, both domestically and internationally, the US women's soccer team remains a symbol of excellence and a driving force for change in the world of sports.